It is usually during this time of the year that we dedicate an entire show to covering some of the biggest stories of the year. Well, this year, the biggest story of the year, and no doubt one of the biggest stories for years to come, is the massive projected budget deficit Connecticut is now facing. Folks here already pay some of the highest taxes in the nation. And brace yourself, many agree it's about to get worse. Governor Lowell Weicker will go down in history as the man who brought us the state income tax in 1991. Since then, the state budget has more than doubled. Now, with another massive budget deficit looming over lawmakers, it's enough to leave some of even the most seasoned lawmakers shaking in their shoes.
We have never in our history of this state literally faced the kind of financial issues we're facing now. It is almost too large for us who've been in government to even grasp.
For fiscal year 09, Connecticut faces a $2.5 billion shortfall, and in 2010, a $3.2 billion deficit. Now that's just a guess. With about $1.3 billion in the state's rainy day fund, that emergency reserve fund doesn't even come close to closing the gap. Connecticut already ranks third as one of the highest tax states in the nation. And according to a recent study, the people in Connecticut pay 11.1% of their income on state and town taxes. And on top of that, Connecticut is drowning in debt. If we ever wanted to pay off the state credit card, every man, woman, and child in the state would have to shell out $6,000. And as if we aren't tapped out enough, some lawmakers say they may have no choice but to raise our taxes again.
I think taxes have to be on the table. Anyone that says they're not on the table, I think, is being less than honest.
And here now with the real story are reporters who will cut through all the bull and give you the real story on the budget crisis. They are Mr. Chris Keating, Capitol Bureau Chief with the Hartford Courant, Mr. Keith Phaneuf with the Record Journal, I should say Journal Inquirer, sorry about that, and Mr. Kevin Rennie, a former lawmaker who now works as an editorial columnist with the Hartford Courant. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Happy holidays to you all. You've got to love the festive background for us.
You're the best.
All right, let's get right to this, though, guys. Keith, I have to thank you. You didn't want me to call you the budget guy, but I'm definitely going to say you are knowledgeable, and everyone around the Capitol knows this. You have those numbers memorized in your head, probably even more so than the governor's budget director. What would you have to say about this overall scenario that we're facing now? How bad is it?
Oh, wow. No pressure, right?
No pressure.
Thank you for leading. I do think it's pretty comparable, possibly worse to what the state went through in 2001, 2002. It might actually harken back to the recession that produced the income tax. I will say throughout this whole thing, I think this is only a problem that is solved not with one or two nightmare scenarios, with every side's, worst option. I think large taxes, painful cuts, union givebacks, borrowing, emptying the rainy day fund over the next 2.5 years. I think all those things happen.
Chris and Kevin, you hear Chris Caruso saying anyone who says that taxes are not on the table is not being honest.
Yeah,
you got to give him credit for saying that.
Well, I think it probably doesn't bother him that tax increases probably wouldn't bother him much, but they are going to have to face the fact that there's no logical way to go with tax increases this year. With the income tax, which you referred to in the setup to this, the issue was income tax or no income tax, and that was a clear-cut issue. We don't have that kind of issue here. There's no great untapped source of income in Connecticut or revenue for the state's government. They have been spending like crazy people, and they don't want to face what is now before them. What is remarkable is really how subdued they've been about talking about what's ahead, and no one wants to show their cards.
Chris, I had mentioned in my story that the budget in Connecticut has doubled since the income tax went into effect. Some would say that that proves spending is out of control. Things haven't changed so much since 1991. What is it that the government is spending its money on now more so than back in 1991 prior?
Well, I guess, frankly, everything costs more. If you go down the line, health care is a huge part of the budget. It's buried in a lot of different accounts. but health care is one of the biggest things that the state pays for, whether it's health care in a nursing home, prescription drugs for prison inmates. There's all kinds of stuff that's buried in the budget that's incredibly expensive. Prescription drugs just alone by themselves are probably $1 billion.
But this is a place perhaps where concessions do need to be made when state employees, I understand, make up 40% of the overall budget and they have $3 copays on drugs. Who else has that? Nobody I know.
When you take the benefits has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
That's really one of the.
When you take a look at
biggest growth
salaries,
area.
benefits, and the ways the state also helps towns with their labor costs, like paying for teachers' retirement benefits, it's like you said, you're talking, add up all those things, you're talking close to 40% of the budget. There's no way out of this situation without some type of concessions. This goes back to Kevin's point, though. All we're getting now is rhetoric. All the different interests in this are still marshaling their forces, not showing their hands. The governor doesn't want to talk about taxes, but she knows it's out there. Labor is saying, well, maybe we'll get bailed out by the federal government. They know they're going to have to give back.
These are some of the things that folks are saying. First of all, let's go to Mythbuster number one. And again, Keith, I have to thank you for helping me with this. The Mythbuster number one is Democrats say that the millionaire tax could help close the gap. You're saying, well, yes, if you increase it 4 times the last proposal. That's not really a legitimate answer, is it, guys?
No, because we're all millionaires now under any plan to increase the state income taxes. They'd have to increase it on such a much lower level of income, way down below a millionaire. That we're all gonna qualify
next year's
to have an
income
tax increase under their plan.
Huge compared to how much an income tax just on millionaires would raise.
Let's go to Mythbuster number 2, Santa Obama. And this is one theory that, again, Keith said, that Obama is going to come in and save the day and give Connecticut massive amounts of federal aid. The answer to this is wrong. Connecticut is the wealthiest state of the nation and most probably low on the list for a big federal government bailout. Keith?
There'll
Chris?
be huge money, but nowhere, again, $2.6 billion is next year's whole. Most analysts are saying we hope there are hundreds of millions more in federal aid, and it's probably all going to be tied to specific things, like you can only use it for road projects or Medicaid programs. It's not the one answer.
A lot of the federal money will end up in Mississippi, and Robert Byrd will get it into West Virginia. It'll end up in Illinois. Connecticut will get some, but no, not to solve the level of problem that we have. And any legislator down in Washington will say, well, why should Connecticut get it? They got a lot of money themselves.
Well, this is something else that we've been hearing a lot at the Capitol for us, the reporters who are there, and this is, at least on the Governor Rell side, cuts, that massive cuts will save the day. Now, again, this is Mythbuster number 3. The answer to this is that would be hard to do because, as you had said, Keith, layoffs and early retirement in the past have saved maybe a couple $100 million. So how do we get out of this, guys?
And in the first year, layoffs are in the tens of millions. They don't save you money until down the road, and that's assuming you don't rehire people.
How do we get out of this?
In early retirement, at this point, our pension fund is stretched to the limit. We'd have to put a lot more money into the pension fund. So early retirement's not going to do it.
Keating.
It's a combination of all these things. You can't raise enough taxes to do it. You can't just do it with cuts alone. You can't just do it with the feds alone. It's got to be a major combination of all these things, and then it can be done.
And we borrow a lot of money as well.
All right. Well, one way could be getting rid of some of this ridiculous spending that's going on at the Capitol. That's what we're going to talk about next.